Okay, so here we go. Dr. Slaton Live, Brains Body, the ultimate experience. And here we go, because we have today Mr. Eclectic, Tony Slaton, talking about the brain talk. He's read the book. Wow, what a morning. Hello, Mr. Tony.
Good morning,
How we
Dr.
doing?
Slaton.
Mr. Eclectic, how we doing today? Because this is a heck of a way to start the day, but we're going to move on and get into the gist of it. Now, before we get going, I'm going to ask you for your opinion on the new book, Brain Talk, Learn the Brain by Dr. Slaton. But before we go there, there's something that has been sticking inside my head between you and me dialoguing about this issue, and that's mental health. So I want to start off because you're involved in mental health, and I want to get your sense of mental health and why you're so involved in it.
So my sense of mental health has to do with mental wellness and our abilities to operate and function. I've actually been trained in mental health and marriage and family counseling, but I didn't particularly care for it because it was really problem centered. Several things about it, but I lean more towards mental wellness. And to me, that talks about the ability to connect with people or interact with people in a successful way, both internally for yourself and externally. And I took a lot of the things that I learned, again, professionally with mental health, and I used them in the youth development work along those lines. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because see, the reason I took my headphones off is because I can hear you more clear this way. But listen, what I'm talking about is mental health. I've always been fascinated with mental health because the dynamics that are inside our community, the communities I grew up in, I was surrounded by mental health issues, whether it was violence, aggression, domestic violence, that's the same thing. But I'm talking about the states of wellness of the people that I was interacting with. And when many of my friends would go home, it'd be very chaotic. But when I talk about mental health and the construct of the brain's body, that's what I'm referring to, like you just now said. Because when you talk about the brain's body, you're talking about health and wellness. Because what are you talking about? How do you improve the brain, leadership abilities over the body to reduce the lack of discipline or control over the body and its aggression? Well, you have to deal with the brain first. And that's what I was saying when I was growing up, was that everybody focused on the body and they never talked to the brain. They never got to, well, shouldn't we be dealing with the brain to create a healthier state in which we can then examine the response patterns of the body? And it seemed to me that was when I was coming through Woodrow Wilson in middle school. You go to the principal's office and they whipping you. They'll whip you, but not tell you what's going on and why you're getting whipped. You just get punished because the teacher sent you to the principal's office. You go in there, he takes the paddle. I was so glad when that law passed and they did away with that. To me, mental health is a strategic field. But what does it mean? You see, no, because it's like an umbrella term. But what I'm talking about is health and wellness in the sense of how you handle emotion, how you handle thinking, and how you handle reflection, because those three influences can be the reason why you're acting out because you lack control. So I always talk about the brain's body because I'm talking about how you inform self, to discipline the body, to focus the senses, because that's health and wellness. If you have those three things and they're locked into focus, discipline, and informing so that you're beginning to understand the crisis of self, I think that's more relative to the terminology of mental health or mental illness that I'm really, really concerned about when I talk about sense of received past functioning. So I'm saying to you, I'm gonna pass it back to you because you read the book, and I'm saying this is all in the book. I mean, I'm saying this is what I'm really writing about.
Right.
It's mental health, mental wellness. I'm talking about kids that come to school upset because they've been subjected to things while in utero or after the breath of life that has impacted their ability to live in a home, learn in school, think in neighborhood, and that's a child's lifestyle. You know, if you can't live in a home, of course you're going to be homeless. If you can't learn in school, of course you're going to be illiterate. If you cannot think in a neighborhood, of course you're going to prison. But that's what we're talking about. And many children don't get that exposure to the why you need to learn how to live inside that house. Not necessarily because your parents are there as much as it is so that you will not be homeless when you age, because you have learned how and what the responsibilities are inside the home. And that follows you from one age to the next. So we're talking about age theory. So a kid in kindergarten is learning how to use the neighborhood, the backyard, and they're thinking. So why don't you translate that to real neighborhood interaction as they go through the puberty stage, where they want more interaction away from parents, and begin to realize, no, your child's supposed to be thinking and learn how to think, and put that into the paradigm in correlation with going to school, and see if that works. Because some of the stuff that we were doing in Merced is exactly what I was doing. I was just using a laboratory to stage neighborhood events, and with programs were designed to help kids think through the crisis of self. You see what I'm saying? So give me your analysis of the book. Maybe that'll tie it in from where I may appear to be.
Certainly. So I'm going to take a minute and read what I wrote in regards to the book. It says, Brain Talk provides models and guidance for understanding and healing. By acknowledging the brain as the leader of an internal conversation, I've been able to better understand and reconcile past experiences that have blocked the flow of information. And thus, my early life careers were very physical. As I've aged, I've had to figure out how to live less physically and more mentally and still get things done. This book helps me accomplish that task. This book can guide you to a better understanding of self. And so that's the review I wrote of the book. I think I would sum it up in saying that I've used the book as a tool to better understand my life experiences, to help me get a better sense of other people's life experiences and understand what they're going through. At the very least, this increased my empathy for other people and just the understanding of the complexity of life.
That was wonderful, because you just now encapsulated it. That's mental wellness. That's mental health. And you're trying to put forth a problem-solving process that allows a person, a reader, to test the material to learn right now. Is this a functional way to look at how self participates in self-healing through understanding and comprehension of what you're experiencing, past to present, and be able to analytically determine the difference because you're studying with other people. That interaction that you talk about is so critical, because that's what brain talk is about, not just the inner voice, but when you interact with another person, you get to test that information flow. And that's what we're talking about, because you got to heal from the inside to the outside, and you got to understand that negative energy can be left negative as long as you introspect with it. But when you find ways, see, you can let it out through writing. You can let it out through acting. Inside the book. Those are brain exercises, but we're talking about a critical subject. And I'll say it again, because what you're talking to me about is healing. And I'm saying healing what? The brain. Why do you want to heal the brain? Because it's been overlooked. I'm not a program person or a process person. So the book is about process loops that you can test while you're reading it to improve your sense and receive path functions. So, for example, as you and I are talking, even if I don't like what you're saying, I'm going to hear you out, but I can hear myself tell me how I feel about what you're saying. So that allows me, when I begin to talk again, like I said, that was wonderful, because I was receiving your information. You were checking out boxes that I checked when I started writing the book. These were the goals and objectives for writing the book. So it makes it more propulsive and understanding. But then I have to bring in brain talk. You're talking about the brain's body. I'm talking about brain talk. How does your brain talk back to you? I'm saying to you that is an innovative design that's built into our human systems that we have to come to understand and not play with, but understand it. What you're talking about is grounding it through interaction with other people beyond self, and then utilizing the environment as a practice site. You see, to confirm your thinking, confirm your control over your emotion, and confirm the fact you're not caught up in your own brain, your own way. Why? Because you move beyond reflection. Because when you go beyond reflection, that feedback is what changes you, and then you change because you go to another level of understanding, because that's confirmation from what you said, what you did, and now what you know to be more factual because you've experienced it. Am I there with you?
I think so. I think so.
Okay. I've always, when I was working with you, for example, I admired the way that you handle the people. That's what we're talking about. The way that you handle, I mean, we could be in a meeting talking about doing a workshop, but you are real time. I mean, if you look at those photos that we have on some of the websites where you're standing next to me, but the moment you got to speak, you were tuned into the culture of the program. So that if there was someone who didn't understand what I was saying, you were able to talk to them from a program perspective that allowed me to understand, wow, Chris, you're really outside the box, because I'm listening to you and I'm saying now, but you bring it back inside the box. Why? Because what are you saying? Well, it's okay to talk about the brain. Out loud. Does that make you feel uncomfortable when we talk about the brain?
No, no, it doesn't. Again, you and I have worked together for a long time, and so I have I feel like I have a very strong sense of you and the work. I think that there's the gap, and so because it's not talked about, how do you introduce it? How do you, again, you start talking about mental health and the enormity of the just enormity of mental health, and people would want to maybe box it in, but I mean everything is mental health, and so it's so big, and so picking the specific area that you would want to work in. So I was specific in saying wellness. I come from mental health, the big, but having to center or focus in on something, and wellness, and to be more specific, wellness with young people. But again, to be a good helper, you have to be, you would want to be in a good place, because young people are watching, they see everything you do, they hear everything you say. And so you got to work on yourself before you can start working with anybody else.
So I'm going to say this to you, and I want you to respond. Brains, body, body, mind. Brains, body, body, mind. What does that speak to you? Brains, body, body, mind.
Brains, body, mind. Again,
I'm not saying the same thing. I'm not saying they're different. When you read the book, I'm saying the brain's body is different from the body mind. But you need to understand both when you're in crisis. So if you're addicted to drugs, for example, and you've lost your sense of feel, and you're trying to recover and be around family and others again, you have your state of mind, and that's what everybody's judging you from, is your past experience that's inside their mindset about you. That's your behavior pattern, that the environmental stimuli of you and your negative energy has framed inside their picture. They call it the mind's eye, for example. So that's frozen. You have to get beyond that static thought in order for you to feel that they're supporting you. I'm saying to you, but the brain's body is a process. It is, you understand the state of mind being fixed. Now, how do you inform yourself on problem solving? You have to change your behavior from the inside out. So the brain's body says, we got to learn how to help self, learn how to help others believe again through inner processing. You have to process the information differently, and your behavior expresses the problem solving that you're trying to move other people to realize, to get behind those states of mind that they're holding in relation to you. Because your past history, children who will not interact with their parents because of the hurt and damage that was done. I'm saying to you, when you talk about the brain's body, because now a parent can talk about, well, in my brain, and I'm trying to do better with my body, I may have lost my sense of feel, but I'm trying to recover it because I'm studying what my body is doing and how my brain is helping me to begin to process information differently as I'm talking to you. Now, it's easy for a kid now to look at the parent and say, a young adult to say, oh, wow, but that's just talk. No, look at what I'm showing you. And don't just look today, continue to look today, tomorrow, a week, like when you go through Alcoholics Anonymous, okay, you're on the timeline. Believe that you can over this timeline so people can see you differently, but it's processing. It has to happen internally, not externally. So if you rely on a state of mind, right, you're living through the behavior, you're trying to change what? How are you going to change your behavior that's caught up in your mind? You have to first change you and the way that you process information. That's the brain's body. So that's why it's important talking about the brain and the body, because remember, the body is what's out of control when you have a dependence, because the brain is disconnected. So those neurons are not sending signals because your sense of feel for self is disconnected from the brain. So you got the body that's just acting out and behaving, right? Because you can't feel the other person. You can't feel the interaction because that sensitivity is not there. It's been taken over by the toxic substance and its influences over your sense and receive past functions or performances. All I'm saying, though, when we talk about recovery, we're talking about what has to happen on the inside. So, for example, when I'm talking about the brain's body, if you're a former addict and you're studying the brain and the body, you look at the body to help you understand what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, because you want to study the body to get your information and your feedback, because the same thing you see in the body when you look in the mirror, you look at another person, they're going to give you a sense of reality as it relates to what you think they're supposed to be reviewing. And if it's changes, they will tell you there's changes, but we still have questions. You see what I'm saying? We talk about problem solving from the inside out, but you recover from learning self. That's all I'm saying to you. And self is the brain. Learning self and the brain to control the body, to manage those emotions. That's what really gets you. It's the emotional effect of recovery. You have to get through those emotions. And how do you do it? By informing yourself, yes, it's real. I know I've done it. I'm there, but I'm moving beyond it. And I know those emotions that I was releasing then, but look at the emotions I'm showing you now. Can you help me help you help me? No, that's real information processing. Because I'm asking you, can you help me continue to learn how to help myself, help you, help me, sustain whatever I'm doing that's good for you and me both, to continue to interact better. Bam, problem solving. Changing the process variables in your action and your interaction. So that's social contact, environmental interaction, and cooperation. That's what the book is talking about.
I do. I think, as I'm listening to you, you as a scientist, me as a practitioner, my focus has been in working with young people has been really just focused. And so not focused on the entirety of change, but maybe just providing a safe place. I know and recognize the importance of safe places for young people, safe places for all people, really, young and old. And that's the start of introducing larger ideas, larger concepts, even the healing. The first step, I think, would be that people feel safe that this is a healing place, or that I'm not going to be judged or condemned or those sorts of things. And so, when I started, I talked about the enormity of mental health, and you're talking about the big picture. And again, as a practitioner, and certainly with the levels of support on the local level, you want to do what you do and do it very well. And so providing safe places for folks is really, for me, the entry point.
So if I was to take us back just for a second and listen to what you now said, but I want you to speak to those children who come to you who are homeless or about to become homeless, and they come to you for that safety because they know it's not safe inside the home. That's what you're describing to me. That's my reflection, because we had those kind of kids that were coming to you. So I understand what you're saying because we experienced it on the front lines. And I'm saying anecdotally, the community-based learning process, I know this one kid that you brought to me who responded to what we're talking about because the parent was still on drugs and his life was so volatile, but he knew that when he came to the Boys and Girls Club, he'd eat, he'd be safe. How do you look at that from the brain body component, and how do you talk to that child? How do you talk to that child to get them to accept your intervention?
The first thing that comes to mind is consistency. And so I think for a lot of people, for a lot of kids, probably they're in a crisis lifestyle. There's a lack of consistency. And so being the same every day, when you start your day, greeting a young person by name, which was a tenet of our work there, but greeting them by name, handshake, eye contact, and not pushing, but just letting them know it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, because that was one of the cases that really stuck inside my mind as you were talking. You were just bringing back vivid reflections, of the crises that we know exist and the kids that fall through the cracks. And I'm saying to you, the intervention for me is that I'm trying to lay out a foundation so that we can look at kids, understand what emotion is and what thought is and what reflection is, and understand the negative flow of information that can impact you emotionally and disrupt your ability to think things through. That's what I was describing. How do you talk to this kid? From my understanding inside the lab work with him, he wanted the truth. He wanted to know, well, I don't want to give up on my mom. How do I, and remember he had two other brothers who were incarcerated. How do I basically stay afloat? And so we're talking about brain talk. We're talking about talking to this young man's brain about handling that emotion. Because that emotion is the first thing that disrupts the sense and receive path. Your emotion disturbed, so now you're acting out because you can't slow yourself down because your thinking is contaminated by that emotional flow. So your reflections are on, I don't want nobody to know how I really feel in this crisis state. How do I move? Well, you put him in a state of fear. But see, he was different. He was concerned about learning how to live with his mother, but maintain his character in the environment. I mean, that was the most important. He cared. I talk about that in the book. He cared. And when you're working with a kid that cares, it's a lot easier for them to help you help them. And that's basically what he was doing. He was using me to get my information to help him. He didn't go and take my information, go do what I said. He took my information and added it to other information, but he consistently made it to school every day. That was your issue. He was consistently moving through school every day because the process was working. Helping a kid learn how to process emotion, learn how to deal with that negative thinking, but understand what reflection does. And know that they can continue to build reflection as long as they release that negative energy. So when he comes to class, the dumping that he was doing, he was collecting new fields of energy that would allow him to move past the crisis of self. And I'm talking about interactively, where he would come to class specifically to get new information. So he can go back and fight the fight from the. We're just talking about problem solving. We're talking about how the brain works when you believe through feelings of care that you can help yourself learn how to move through the crisis of self. Because that's what you're really talking about. Can I get me out of the way? That emotion. Can I get me out of the way long enough for me to realize how to move through this without hurting myself and other people? How can I stay true to me? I'm a good person. That is the real fight we're fighting. How do we allow children that are damaged to still be who they are and resonate from there because they're being worn down as they move through the system? And I'll close with this. Inability to live inside that home. Get to school and learn to disrupt it because they don't have trust in their sense of receive path function because that emotion is eating them up. And in the neighborhood, it's supposed to be a safe place to act out when you're going through crisis because it's expected for you to act out. But what about those kids who choose not to act out? And you remember the one kid that was inside the program that got shot in the leg. He was one of those that I would say was trying to move through the praise of self and stay on the path, even though he's surrounded by gang. I'm just saying to you, problem solving, the brain's body, my brain has been leading my body. My brain has been leading my body at all times. My mind has to be open to change. Shall we just not say it? No, because the mind is a social cognitive event. No, in my research, children that you teach about the mind as a social event of interaction between another person that frames the image of self in the body. So now people are looking at your body and saying, you got a bad state of mind. Something wrong with your character just by what they see. But when you teach them about the brain's body, you're teaching them how to change from the inside out, the projection of self and the brain lead of the body. That's what we're really talking about throughout the book. Mm-hmm. So, Ms. Tony, yes, close, please. Tell me, how would you close our interview? What would you like the readers to know in addition to what you've already said?
I think for me as a practitioner and you as a scientist, there's still work to be done to close the gaps. Again, hands-on with kids and kind of where I started with a safe place, but recognizing that we're building to something. But my message to other people that it would take time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to reassure kids and adults, to reassure people, to strengthen, their selves so that they can start accessing other things, doing other things.
Absolutely. That's what we've been talking about. Great way to summarize. Tuning out. But Mr. Tony, Mr. Eclectic, I want to thank you for coming and giving me some of your time. I know we had a difficult start, but we made it through. Thank you again and have a wonderful evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.